There we go. Great, thank you, Alexandra. So good afternoon. So as Alexandra said, back in 2015, we decided to produce a comprehensive and data-driven report to measure the state of European tech. We're 5 years into that now, 5 reports into it, still going strong. But the story of what's happening here is so much richer, so much more nuanced than when we started. So over those years, we've really had to scale the report, and today, it's just going to be a really brief summary of what's a much larger body of work. So I encourage you to visit the site for the report, to play with the data yourselves and draw your own conclusions from the insights that we put together for you. So when we kicked off this project, belief in European tech was largely limited to the European tech industry itself. Already back then in 2015, insiders could see that Europe's breakthrough achievements would become the platform for even greater success. And this matters because belief is just as vital as talent and capital when it comes to building a healthy tech ecosystem. Belief is ultimately what helps people with great ideas today to become the founders of tomorrow. It's what makes people give up the security of a well-paid corporate job for the unpredictability of startup life. It's what drives the narrative that moves markets and shapes capital allocation and investment. So fast forward to today, and the data's really clear. The rest of the outside world now shares our homegrown belief in European tech, and the message has finally landed. In 2015, $10 billion of investment felt like a huge milestone. Last year, investment exceeded $35 billion. In that first report, we pointed to a lack of late-stage funding. And last year, more than 50 different European tech companies raised rounds of more than $100 million. Back then, there were just 22 venture-backed European tech companies with a valuation of $1 billion or higher. Today, there are more than 100. There's no doubt we're producing some of the fastest growing companies on the planet right now. And the returns from investing in Europe stand up for themselves too. So let's talk a little bit about what that means. Well, for starters, top-tier US VCs have woken up to what is happening here too. The amount of time they're spending on the ground here in Europe is clearly on the rise, and so is their investment activity here. In 2019, 19% of all rounds involved the participation of at least one US investor. That's doubled since our first report. Now, it's often said that the arrival of new players is validation of a market opportunity. And while that's certainly true, it also fundamentally changes the nature of competition. And in this case, we're seeing its impact felt in fundraising timelines, in valuations, and in terms. We're not only seeing that rounds are happening faster, but valuations are moving higher too. More European tech success stories are also starting to unlock mainstream institutional capital, which has been on the outside for far too long. This year, or in 2019, we finally saw some progress from one really important source of capital, pension funds. Pension funds committed more than $1 billion to European venture funds last year, and in doing so, helped to push fundraising to record levels again. And by rebalancing their allocations away from legacy industries and towards game-changing technology instead, they can help to bring the future forward here in Europe. So it's great that their commitments are up nearly threefold. But I think what's really exciting is how much room for growth is left. Let's not forget that those same European pension funds sit on assets of over $4 trillion. So all of this is great, wonderful news, but it's really not the time for complacency. We think we can't afford to lose focus. So really now, looking ahead, is the time to continue to chart our own course, to build upon Europe's unique values and unique strengths, and not fixate on what's happening in the US or China. So I want to pick out 3 areas where we think we can differentiate ourselves to help shape our own destiny. Policymakers can have a big role to play in the future of European tech. But our survey showed that there's still a real disconnect between them and the industry. while European tech founders and investors have never been more optimistic about the future, policymakers were the most skeptical of all the respondent groups. It's as if the two worlds are still talking past each other. Tech here, as we've shown, has exploded over the past 5 years. But despite this, those setting the policy agenda have focused more on big tech in the US than they have on championing existing European tech success stories. When we went and asked founders, what support would they like from policymakers, they told us it would be to remove the day-to-day barriers to scaling, the things that hold them back from going even bigger and even faster. That's things like hiring and incentivizing the best talent, or enabling easier and simpler operations across what is still a really fragmented European market. But again, in Brussels, there's been more focus on the taxation of tech giants than there has on changes to stock option taxation, for example. Are we in danger of taking our eyes off the real prize? We have to keep building organically and do that from the bottom up. We have to support the European tech innovation that is already flourishing so successfully. But this should be a two-way conversation. If we're here asking Brussels to open the door, then we as an industry have to be ready to walk through. 2020, of course, marks a new decade, but also a new term for the European Commission. And so there's a window of opportunity for closer engagement. It's a chance to inform and shape the future together, and to try to plot a course that creates the optimal conditions for further European tech success. So last year's report highlighted that the entire European tech industry needed a wake-up call when it came to diversity and inclusion. Sadly, there's been no progress on the headline figures since we first reported on them. In 2019, just 8% of funding went to founding teams that are women or of mixed gender. So if those first numbers in our report in 2018 were shocking, last year's numbers were no different. There are, however, some signs that things may start to change. So in our survey, we were able to see that awareness is increasing. People are feeling better informed and more empowered to take positive action, whether that's to hire more diverse talent or simply to make diversity a priority in their company. We also see that some VCs are starting to make changes to the way that they source new investment opportunities. But at the same time, we found that the onus is falling upon women and people from underrepresented backgrounds to lead this charge themselves. Our survey showed, for instance, that women VCs are disproportionately more likely to be the ones attending events with participation from more diverse founders, to be focusing on sectors where there's greater founder diversity, to run open office hours or organize dedicated events themselves to reach into different founder groups. And all of those approaches, which certainly can be effective, have to be shared more equally if we're to accelerate change. So I'm having to stand up and repeat what I said when we shared our report last year. Diversity, equality, and inclusion needs to be a European tech priority, not just for some, but for all. We really won't realize our full potential if we continue to let talent and value evaporate away from our industry because of inertia on this issue. Last year, while setting out her vision for a digital Europe, Margaret Vestager observed that China has all the data, the US has all the money, but here in Europe, we have purpose. And there's some truth in that. Many of today's European founders aren't just aiming for commercial success. They're trying to solve some of the world's largest problems at the same time. And of course, it makes business sense too. Consumers and tech talent alike are demanding that their companies think about more than just the bottom line. We see that purpose is a core part of a growing number of European tech companies. We identified in our report over 500 that are tackling at least one of the United Nations Sustainable Development Goals head-on. Companies like Infarm from Berlin, who are creating new environmentally impactful ways of farming using 95% less water, 75% fewer pesticides than industrial farming. Or there's Northvolt from Sweden, who raised $1 billion last year to produce the world's greenest battery with a significantly lower carbon footprint than traditional methods. And investors are getting on board too. They supported purpose-driven European tech companies like these and many others with more than $4 billion in 2019. In just 5 years, we've seen that level of investment increase more than 6x. It's so exciting to see this reallocation of capital towards a more conscious investment approach. The world's biggest challenges are also some of the biggest market opportunities. And it's clear that purpose and profit aren't mutually exclusive, they're mutually reinforcing. So the last 5 years have proven that not only can we do tech, we can do it in our own European way. We've learned many of the lessons from what has helped to make Silicon Valley the preeminent place globally to build a tech company, but we've not blindly copied how they've done it. We're strengthened here by our differences, not limited by them. European tech is richer for our unique blend of cultures and values. And by doing it our way, we've transformed belief that Europe does have a role to play on the global technology stage. The report shows very clearly that everybody wants a piece of the action here now. And so it's now in our hands to create our own vision for the future of tech in Europe. And let's make that vision one that allows us to continue to create enormous value, but also do so by benefiting from diversity and purpose at the same time. Thank you very much.